Guys, we discussed, we thought that we'll discuss some international politics. We have never done this before. It's our first time, and we wanted to actually dive deep into the China, Taiwan, and the US situation which has developed. Just to give you guys a little context, Taiwan is a very strategic point in all of this conflict. It has been ruled independently since 1949, I believe, and
1896. That's when Japan conquered Taiwan from China.
yeah, but independently since
Independent.
Taiwan has been independently ruled since a long time, and in 2016, once this election happened, and the new president called Tsai, Tsai, I don't know how to pronounce that, but she came in and she was essentially against the policy that Taiwan should be unified with China under the People's Republic of China, and that's when the conflict started. Meanwhile, US has been flooding Taiwan with its weapons. The trade in Trump's organization actually pumped up a lot specifically, and Biden has continued the same journey. So on one side, US is pumping in weapon sales. On the other side, Xi Jinping is absolutely hellbound that by 2049 he wants to achieve the one unified China dream, where Taiwan should be included in the main Republic of China and it should be ruled by one unified state and two systems, something which it has done similarly with Hong Kong. So that is the situation, and recently I think Nancy Pelosi also traveled. Nancy Pelosi is the House Speaker of US. She traveled to Taiwan and escalated all tensions across. So why don't you guys tell me how this whole situation has panned out? Do you see a foreseeable war essentially, and is it the rise of Cold War too? That is what you want to know.
Okay, so clarifying on one thing, that one country, two party is what China did with Hong Kong when Britishers handed over Hong Kong to China in 1997 with a 50 years time plan. That in 50 years we will have one country, two party, but eventually we'll integrate Hong Kong as part of the PRC. Similar thing is going to happen is what they want to do with Taiwan, Mongolia, and different other POC or the countries that are running independently right now, not part of the PRC.
The PRC is People Republic of China.
PRC is People Republic of China, and then POC, that is People of China, which Taiwan has a government which is POC. China has a government which is PRC. So US directly talks with PRC officially, but unofficially, as Chirag said, they transfer supplies to Taiwan.
POC.
POC. Right. So they, like Washington, recognized PRC as the one China, one policy thing. Right. So eventually they don't want one party, one country, two party. They want one China. One China is what Xi Jinping's vision is, and that is what they want to achieve by 50 years. That is 1997 to 2047 was for Hong Kong, and in similar timeline is what they want to achieve with different other countries, which is part of POC right now, or independently running, like Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia. Then we have Taiwan and Hong Kong. So that is what they want to do. But they propose the same thing to Taiwan, that they want to convert it to one country, two party system. But Taiwan protested. The new president protested because they've seen what has happened to Hong Kong. Right.
Oh, yes.
It was like the timeline was that Hong Kong will become part of China by 2047. But 2016 onwards, China started cracking down a lot of things in Hong Kong. They started asserting pressure in political ways, in economical ways on Hong Kong, which due to which a lot of students started protesting against China in Hong Kong, and we saw a major protest break out just before COVID in Hong Kong, which was messy, which was China was showing its true color. That alerted a lot of other countries like Taiwan and different other places, which they didn't want to come into China mainland because of these reasons. So yeah, that was one of the tension. That was one of the trigger point that created a tension between different countries, which is part of the China.
But what do you mean by true colors? Like, China is trying to uphold an agreement from the past, right? So what is the meaning of true?
Let me answer this question for Ayush's behalf. Is the fact that sorry, is the fact that China in itself is quite communist, right? Like China is a communist country. Hong Kong was more capitalist, more democratically run than anything else. Taiwan itself is more democratically run than anything else. So what Taiwan and Hong Kong did was they achieved far more financial freedom, far more profitability, and they were kind of ideal situations. And they have been growing crazily. When people living in China go visit Hong Kong, go visit Taiwan and see the progress which these guys have made and with the freedom which these guys have, I think it also caters to a revolt or revolution which the Chinese government at the top of a communist government wouldn't want any of that to happen. So when they would want, and that's why I think the crackdown on the entrepreneurs also by China on all these guys, say Alibaba, right, like Jack Ma and everyone else we've heard of, we don't really know what happens because there's such controlled media state that we don't really hear what goes out from there. But these guys used to live in Hong Kong, or these guys didn't always used to live in China. They had bases in Singapore and all of that, but they haven't been going out of the main China mainland. So I think China wants to control everything, and that's how they want to be a superpower, right? Like that's the reason why they have $3 trillion of US dollars in terms of debt. That's why they've been the ones who have been providing maximum monetary support. They did it with Sri Lanka, they did it with Pakistan, Bangladesh, a lot of African nations. They have been trying to control ports everywhere. And one of the ways to actually pardon the debt is to control the port city by themselves. So there will be small barricades of China in itself, which is a playbook from East India Company, is what I think of. Where, or like England, right? Like where you try to you control through trade initially, through monetary benefits, and then you start controlling everything else.
Yeah, I've also heard that there's this hypothetical island line,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
right? Which
So you
both
have
of them-
South Korea,
Yeah.
then you have Japan, then you have Taiwan, and then you have Philippines.
Hmm.
So basically, Japan, South Korea, Philippines kind of is part of US allies.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then you're left with Taiwan,
Hmm.
and then there's China.
Yeah.
So US wants Taiwan to get into NATO.
Hmm.
If Taiwan gets into NATO, then NATO comes, like Western countries come very close to Chinese border, right? And Taiwan becomes a very strategic point because of this reason for China, that they want to have control over Taiwan so that they can have the nearby control towards these
Yeah.
allies.
Yeah.
That is one reason. And second, as we discussed, like Taiwan is like more than 65% of producer of semiconductors and chipsets across the world, right? So that is supply chain control. China wants to have that supply chain control towards the world.
So before we get to the semiconductors part, I just want to focus on the island part, right?
Right.
This island chain, and just to clarify, Taiwan is not part of the NATO right now, but every country has recognized Taiwan as an ally of the NATO, including US.
13 countries have recognized Taiwan as sovereign.
As so, yeah. So now the crazy part is, if so let's just go to the concept of why does a country want to control a tiny piece of an island, right? Although they have such crazy landmass.
Initially they didn't
right?
care about
Correct.
it.
Yeah,
Once
but,
it became
but now why? So and then I was just thinking, and I was talking to some friends as well, that the core reason is these islands behave like permanent aircraft carriers, which cannot be sunk,
Correct.
right? And unsinkable aircraft carriers, it allows you to build airstrips, and it allows you to reach, attack, or access nearby locations without having to worry about long distance transportation of your pilots, and refueling becomes absolutely easy.
Correct. It's
That's
a
a
military
strategic
group.
So that is a
Strategic.
very militarily, strategically aligned positions.
That's why US.
Hence,
is
everyone
pretty
is just
happy.
going bonkers after these fucking small islands, and it just doesn't make sense. But militarily, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why that island chain and the line?
Exactly.
is
How much
there.
of this is actually triggered by the fact that
Nancy Pelosi.
there's no actually Russia and Ukraine, because there also the subject of discussion was
Yeah,
NATO.
right.
Suddenly NATO discussion comes here also.
I think it's quite triggered.
Is it very much triggered?
I mean, so a lot of people are debating about that, like why US is taking all these stances and why they are pushing these countries to come as part of the NATO when there's so much global tension coming up across the globe. So, I mean, yeah, it's a very ill-timed thing by either the existing government or the previous governments that have taken these steps, that suddenly every country which has a dictator or which is an authoritarian regime is trying to show their
Muscle,
power,
yeah.
muscle, because the economy is in turmoil for every other country.
Yeah.
Economy is in turmoil for every other country because of the disrupted supply chains. Right. That's why the economy is going down. The people are getting they are not. There's a internal unrest in there, and they want to assert control. And suddenly, US comes and says that okay, I want this country to be part of NATO. I want that country to be part of NATO, or pressurizing them to be part of NATO. And those countries happens to be at a borderline in proximity of these big
Russia,
nations.
China.
Russia, China, big nations. So they feel threatened internally as well as externally. Internally, economy is in turmoil, and then suddenly they feel a external pressure of someone coming up and saying this can become a military base, or this can become an ally. So that's why I think it's coming up with Russia coming up.
So
But
reading all of
where
this.
are you guys at? Like, do you think the older agreements should be upheld, and what's happening is just interference by other countries that this should not happen? Or do you think any agreement done by our forefathers should not be upheld because the times have changed?
Just to give you a brief, you know what happened with Taiwan? You said it has been independent since
1949.
1949.
Yeah.
What happened? Why was it independent? Basically, this was part of Japan in World War I, right? Japan lost. Then there was a election going on in China. Mao communist government, and there was a different government. Communist party won, and that the other party went to Taiwan and started ruling there.
Oh.
So that's how Taiwan became independent, because there was a different party running there. After a certain period of years, these two parties did an agreement with each other that okay, we recognize each other as dependent countries and whatever, and eventually will hand over Taiwan and will want it to become part of PRC. So there was that party that was running Taiwan for a very long time, until in 2016 they lost.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In 2016 they lost, and when they lost, then they started questioning that agreement, which you said that should be upheld.
It's like BJP not willing to uphold agreements done by Congress party after they've ruled for 40 years
40
after
years.
independence.
They are willing to change the constitution just because.
That is what happened with China. That's why the political tension and all those things.
Yeah.
I think this is what happened in Ukraine also.
That is actually very interesting, because now I question the intent of the party also, because
Yeah.
just because it's a different party, they will want to try different things to
Exactly.
build their positioning.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if they are thinking in their.
So,
And same thing happened in Ukraine, by the way.
Mhm.
Zelensky came in 2016, and that's when he took a strong stance that they want to move away from Russia. Before that, most of the prime minister or the president in Ukraine, was always pro-Russia aligned. This was the first time a non-Russian aligned guy became, and there was.
But that must be very obvious to people also who are choosing them. They want to not be pro-Russia, that they're not supporting a party which is pro-Russia.
Absolutely.
Or they don't want to be pro-China because they are now supporting a party
Oh,
which is.
interesting fact. From 1990s till now, there was a poll happening that do you consider yourself as Chinese, Taiwanese, or whatever. So it has increased. More than 60% of people in Taiwan now associate themselves as a Taiwanese.
And not even both.
Not even both.
Like it's Taiwanese, both Chinese.
Correct. So
Yeah.
that is a crazy data that has.
I mean, the value of Taiwan in itself has grown up, the chip and the semiconductor industry. But what most of us are not feeling is that the China was providing a lot of support to Taiwan in terms of manufacturing, which they have cut short.
Yeah.
So Taiwan will not.
1/8 of the supply is taken up by China.
Yeah.
If Taiwan has $800 billion of semiconductor industry, $100 billion is taken up by China. So China is one of the biggest client of Taiwan.
Yeah.